Okay, that's the real version of Africa by Toto,
Yes.
not that Weezer stuff.
Did Weezer do that song?
With Weird Al helping out.
Oh. See, I don't track Weird Al the way you do, so I didn't know that. I just know the Toto version.
Yeah, well, I'm a little... they're doing a movie of Weird Al's life.
Oh, no.
And I think... was it Daniel Radcliffe? I think they hired Daniel Radcliffe to play Weird Al. And I'm still trying to... in my mind, I'm trying to... does Daniel Radcliffe represent... or would he play... would he play Weird Al?
Yeah.
So, Evan Rachel Wood is Madonna.
Okay.
Daniel Radcliffe is Weird Al. Rainn Wilson is going to play Dr. Demento.
Oh, see, that's going to be kind of fun.
Julianne Nicholson is going to play Mary Yankovic. And I think it's in post-production, so they filmed it. And so now they're putting the final touches on it and getting ready to release it.
He's still alive, right?
Oh, yeah. Weird Al's still alive. So, and he co-wrote the script.
Oh.
So.
Okay. Did not know there'd be... did he have a really interesting life?
Well, I guess that's what we're going to find out.
Okay. I'm actually looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, he did a movie, he was really popular in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Thanks in part to Dr. Demento and Michael Jackson and Madonna. Because he did a couple of Michael Jackson songs, and then Madonna reportedly called him up and said, "You need to do a parody of like a surgeon, or like a virgin.
Like a virgin,
He
like a surgeon. Yeah,
you need to do that." And so that kind of launched his career. And then he did the movie UHF. I get the two confused. And that came out in '89, and it didn't do very well at the box office.
Yeah, I don't remember a movie.
Kind of went down. So his career kind of stalled at that point in time. And then Nirvana came out with their album with the kids swimming in the pool, Smells Like Teen Spirit. And Weird Al did a cover of that song. And that...
I remember that.
They got his career going again.
Yep.
Had cameos with Dick Van Patten, which I thought was just funny. Yeah.
Weird Al is something else. There's only one.
That's right.
That's good.
And nobody else can use that name either.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, if I said Weird Gene...
Oh, no, it doesn't rhyme. It doesn't flow.
It doesn't flow,
it
and you go, well, you're just like Weird Al.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard to repeat. So, well, how are things at the
But
chamber?
we might say Gene is weird.
Well, that's said every day. Oh, that's not a surprise.
Yeah.
So how are things at the chamber?
Doing good. We're doing good. It's fun to be busy. I mean, we were always busy even during COVID, but it's just different,
Yeah.
So it's really fun to be back completely to normal and all of that. It's just funny how we refer to COVID times, though, in almost every conversation. When you're looking back on something, or what did we do last year, or, whatever, you just have those conversations throughout the day, not just in chamber world, but all the time. And you always refer back to COVID times. It's
sure.
Like an era.
Well, speaking of COVID times, I know you spent a lot of time as a chamber director I'm hearing that interference too, so that's
okay
on the air. You had a lot of Zoom meetings with other chamber folks around the state who are also trying to figure out how do we get through COVID.
We did.
Are you still communicating with other chamber
actually
folks?
So one of the really great things that came out of COVID was just that. So we started meeting on Zoom weekly, and then we started meeting twice a week because things were just changing so much, and we're actually working on issues quite a bit during that time, and trying to figure out how to help our businesses and the restaurants and what's open, what's closed, all of that kind of stuff. It was just crazy. And we usually had somebody on our meetings from the state. Very consistently, somebody from the public education department was there. And so we were able to give them feedback about what was happening to our youth and our families and that kind of stuff. So and we were able to give them input about what was happening on the ground, when the stores were closed, but Walmart was open, and then the 75 people in the store and the lines, and, all of that kind of stuff. So those meetings were helpful, I suppose, if not frustrating. But the result of that has been that we continue to meet. So we're still meeting. We've pulled it back to twice a month now, so every other week. I have a feeling that as the legislative session gets a little bit closer, we'll start meeting weekly again. So sometimes we're trading tips for, chambers, board management, membership management, whatever, just internal kind of the business of a chamber. But a lot of times we're talking about issues that are coming up. So like yesterday we were talking about paid medical leave, paid sick leave, the potential for another minimum wage bill to come up, and how to prepare for some of those conversations that we expect will happen.
Talk about another paperwork nightmare for small businesses.
Oh.
This paid personal time off legislation that passed. And it was interesting in that because, like, for our business, we're a small business. We got a dozen folks that work here. And we've always been very accommodating with anybody and everybody on the staff when they've had take the kids to the school thing or medical appointments or whatever. But I worry about some of our, we're going to have to fight through it to tabulate it.
Yes.
It's not that we're opposed to it or anything. It's now something that we've already done.
Right.
That we've already been doing. Now we have to document it.
Right. And it's not easy to document.
Right. And I'm going to have Joby, when he does a ball game, is going to have to fill out a timesheet.
Yes.
Even though the only thing he does for us are the ball games.
Yes.
So we've got to calculate the hours that Joby spends doing the ball games so that he can get bonus time, even though he's not working unless he's doing a ball game.
Right.
Right? Am I interpreting it right?
It's so I sat through a webinar. So for anybody out there who has questions, give me a call. I can either get a hold of a recording of that webinar or share the information that I took, or, that I wrote down. A couple of things that really stuck out to me on that one were if you have employees who don't work regular shifts. I mean, so like, a lot of us work an 8-hour day, 8 to 5 or whatever. But for those who work part-time or uneven schedules, and I know there are lots of businesses like that, the time that you have to give the employee off when they take a sick day is the average of the last 2 weeks. And that's on you to go figure that out. So, I mean, it's math. It's not that big of a deal, but it's just another tracking system. The other thing that really stuck out to me was if the employee leaves, quits, but comes back into your employment within a year, they have to get all that time back. So you have to keep track of that time even after they leave. You have to, by law, provide information to all of your employees. So the state provided a letter, or you can do your own, but you have to explain what the benefits of this paid sick leave are, and then at least quarterly make sure they have an understanding of how much sick leave time they've earned. And then, of course, they start earning it immediately. So there's no what do you call it? There's no trial period and so other questions that came up in the webinar I was in was it seems like it would just be a lot easier to just hand them the hours. Like, okay, beginning of the year, here are all the hours that you'll earn for the year so that you don't have to continually track 1 hour for every 30 hour, whatever. But there's a downside to that, too, because if they do leave, you will owe them all that time, whether they have earned it or not.
Right.
So there's
you can't take it back.
You can't take it back. So if you gave it to them at the beginning of the year on the understanding that they would earn it throughout the year, giving it to them means they have it now.
Yeah.
It's in a bank, and you can't say
take it back. Yeah.
Right.
And I think you can also pay off the employees at the end of the year. So say they don't take any personal time off. And so in theory, if they work a 40-hour week, at the end of 52 weeks, they'd have 64 hours of paid personal time. I think you can...
That I don't know. That's actually a good question. We could get an answer to that if somebody does have that question.
I think I read that in there. I think that at that time you can say, all right, here's your bonus.
Yeah.
You can't call it a bonus because they've earned it. But again, it's a paperwork nightmare. In my opinion, this is my opinion.
Yes.
That are there people who are in jobs that have difficulty getting time off for important family things? Probably. Is everybody perfect? No. Do a lot of your bigger employers and your bigger companies already have plans in place to handle this type of thing through negotiated union contracts or just regular contracts? Yes.
Right.
So we're going to take a cannon to kill a mosquito.
Right.
In terms of the problem when it comes to the number of people that have difficulty getting personal time off or family emergencies and things like that. And so I think about the business that has one or two employees, that's primarily run and operated by the owner-operator, who has a lot of seasonal business.
Right.
That is going to have to start tracking all of this stuff, and for what ultimately at the end of the day benefit is it really going to do?
It's really difficult. And the list of reasons you can use to take that sick leave is pretty extensive. So people need to get familiar with that because it's not all necessarily common sense. And whether you require a note from a doctor or whoever, whatever, all of that stuff has to sort of be it needs to be in policy, company policy, essentially, so that you're consistent across the board. The other thing that employers really need to watch out for is that I think an employee can come back on you up to 3 years after the incident in which they feel they were shortchanged on sick leave or were denied sick leave or something like that they could be owed. And so that's a tracking system that you've got to hang on to, and you need to make sure you're doing everything correctly, because employees, they do need the time off, and I do understand that, but you can be tricked also if you don't make sure you have all the right documentation in place, which is very difficult. Most small businesses don't have a whole HR department to keep you in compliance, right? I'm assuming you're probably kind of your HR director.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So those are just little tricks that you have to be careful at. And I know a lot of employers will have, if an employee needs a day off, you have to find somebody to fill your shift. You can't do that. That's not allowed any longer.
Yeah.
That'll be up to the employer to make sure that shift is filled, not the employee who needs the time off. So, it's just a lot of rules and a lot of
it's going to make it. I'm thinking like take a family-run business. Mom and dad set up the business, and they got 3 or 4 kids working in there.
Yes.
The kids now earn personal time.
Yes, I
paid
believe,
personal time.
So. I believe so.
You
cannot abuse your children.
Well, not this way anyway. But it's make them eat in the restaurant is what you got to do. But so again, I go back to the cannon and the mosquito thing. Is that we're taking a cannon and we're applying it blanket to every business everywhere. There's no minimum, like a lot of policies that a state will pass. You have to meet a minimum number of employees in order for that policy to apply, which thereby prevents your mom and pops and your small businesses from having to hire HR departments to comply with all this stuff. Not in this particular case.
That's right.
It does not matter. And so for somebody like me, 10 o'clock Sunday night, I'm driving out to the transmitter site. I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this. I am not going to track my hours and go back to me and tell me at the end of the day that I owe me this number of hours for personal time off that I have earned because of all this other time that I've done. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's crazy in some cases. And again, I'm not saying that there aren't instances or cases where people have had difficulty getting time off to be able to do some of the things. But it just, and again, I'm expressing opinion. You don't have to, you know, if the job situation or the boss is that awful, there's lots of jobs out there, I would think, you know, that if you're not getting treated the way you perceive to be fair, that you could maybe go to another place and get another job where maybe it's a better thing. But I guess that's just naive in my thinking. I'm not. And so that eliminates that, you know, I don't know. It's just going to be difficult. I can just see the traps that are going to be laid and the problems that a lot of small mom and pops are going to have trying to be in compliance.
It's going to be difficult. You know, the business or the industry that I really feel for is the restaurant industry, because they do have, it's so difficult to schedule shifts. I feel, just looking at a restaurant and having worked in a restaurant once many years ago, I imagine that filling all the shifts, which we know is a problem right now, is difficult. And just the nature of how a restaurant works, the shift work, you know, I know they may have some set shifts, but there's a lot of overlap, and, you know, it's just not a, okay, everybody show up at 8 and everybody leave at 5 type of business. Right. Which makes it, I think, just daunting just getting everybody there to run the restaurant. Not to mention the fact that you've now added this layer of time management and time owed back. That's just, I can imagine it would be very difficult. Yeah. So, anyway, we can get the information from the webinar, get the recording if anybody's interested in listening to it. It was presented by an attorney who deals in those issues, those legal issues, and read the law forward and backward and has interpreted it. So yeah. And that's another thing, is that there is some gray area still. Of course. So how, you know, it depends on how, you know, if you are going to be checked in on, I guess it would depend on how that regulator sees, you know, interprets what you're doing. Are you doing it well enough or not? Right. And a lot of that's going to depend on the complaint, if you will, if there are employees who think that they're not being treated properly under the law. Yes. And then they're going to complain or have issues that need to be addressed. And at some point, it's going to go to a state entity that then is going to come in and say, all right, even though the law says you don't have to have paperwork, you kind of do. How do you demonstrate compliance if you don't have paperwork? Yeah, I would say to any employer, document, and that goes for unemployment claims, that goes for paid sick leave, just kind of anything that you do between any relationship between you and an employee. I think it's very important to document. And the other way around too. Employees, you know, need to look out for themselves as well, make sure they're being treated properly, but you know, I think documentation is important. It is. So, unfortunately. So if you have any questions about this, and again, if you're just now hearing this or you've heard it but don't think it applies to you, you're wrong. You're wrong. It applies to you. It applies to every person who has an employee. Yes. Period. Yes. Yes. Including family. Yes. Now, if you have contract employees, that's a little different, but it is. They are cracking down on that too. I mean, the definition of a contract employee is not that easy. It's not an easy standard to meet. So if you have a person that you consider a contract employee, but they're really only working for you and coming on a regular basis, the state would tell you that person is an employee and you should be paying payroll taxes and stuff to do their job. So that changes things. Yeah. And so you just need to look out for that too. I think a lot of people over time have kind of used that as a little bit of a loophole, or like a way to say they're doing them, we're doing us, you know, but that's not really the case, and the state doesn't see that as loosely as some employers would.
Yeah, no, I've read some of that aspect of it too and talked to some folks about it. I'm like, really? Because, again, we hire a lot of people to help us out with ball games.
Mm-hmm.
They don't work for Pecos Valley Broadcasting except when it's time, like Joby,
To do the game. Mm-hmm.
So
if they're employees, they are extremely part-time.
exactly, and that's apparently what they are because of a number of things. I don't want to get into it on the radio, but I have one idea that I've thought that I need to run past a legal beagle to see if
Okay.
to see if this can I do this? Would this help me with this particular dilemma that I'm trying to? Because we want to be compliant.
Right. Absolutely.
Let me state that.
You want to be compliant,
to be
and
compliant.
you do want to be fair.
That's
and
right.
you want to be a good employer.
That's right.
And I think that is the intent of this law.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the devil's in the details.
It's like many laws that are passed by legislative bodies that think they're doing what needs to be done to address a major issue,
Mm-hmm.
but none of them really have to do this
Right.
because they're not generally business people that have to
Right.
do this.
And there are always unfortunately, most of the time, unintended consequences.
Yeah, so it makes
Yeah.
it difficult.
Yes. So, if
Well, I can take a break.
okay,
Because
Take a
it's
break.
8:36, so
Do
we'll
it.
take a break. We'll be back with more, hopefully happier news coming up next.
Now for a pick.